You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is Friday, September 3rd, 2021, coming to you early with John Rubino because of the Monday holiday. And John, I think it's time for Biden to declare a national emergency. But first, email us with your questions, comments, put them on YouTube. We love getting them. KL@kerrylutz.com. But getting back to that emergency, John, I mean, and I think really the FDA, the FTC's gotten involved in it. I think it needs to be escalated because it's up there with Afghanistan, and that is there is a chronic shortage or breakage of McDonald's shake machines, and nobody seems to be able to fix this. And it's causing a lot of angst across the country. It's up there, probably a national priority is up there with Afghanistan, John.
Hey, Kerry. Well, it's part of a bigger theme, right? We're not good at stuff anymore. We can't extricate ourselves from occupations of other countries, and we can't make milkshakes at McDonald's, along with a lot of other stuff, right? There's no cars on car lots anymore because we somehow can't get a hold of the computer chips that you need to make cars. It just goes on and on. I might be repeating myself on your show by saying this is like the 1970s all over again, but it is starting to be that way because back in the 1970s, that was our last big currency crisis in the U.S. and several things were happening. One is that we just had a chaotic retreat from the Vietnam War, which is a lot like the Afghanistan thing, where we're trying to take off and fly away, and people are holding on to the vehicles and falling off and everything. And we weren't very good at making cars back then. The Japanese car makers were coming in and just eating GM's and Ford's lunch. So we didn't really necessarily think we were good at manufacturing stuff anymore. And we were borrowing too much money and printing too much currency, and the dollar was going down and inflation was going up. So it's very similar to what's happening almost across the board here right now, where we've got, employment disappointing. The jobs number came out today and it was really, really disappointing. And all the big investment banks and Fed offices are starting to scale back their GDP projections for the year ahead dramatically, from 8% to 3% growth is kind of how these projections are being scaled back. It's kind of an across the board loss of perception of confidence and sense that we have control over our own destiny that's happening right now. And in a fiat currency system, that can be deadly because a fiat currency like the dollar or the euro or the yen only have value because we trust the people who are in charge of it. And as soon as we lose trust in those people, then we, by definition, lose trust in that currency. And that was what happened in the 1970s. The dollar just fell off the table, inflation spiked to double digits. And to get out of it, we had to raise interest rates to 14, 16, 18%, depending on the interest rate. And we could never do that now. So we don't have the tool to fix a replay of the 1970s, and yet we seem to be heading into a situation that's very similar, both numerically and psychologically, to the 1970s. So that's a very scary prospect if that's what's happening.
And back then, don't forget, the country economically was a lot stronger. The industrial base was in place. We had way, way less debt. Like we had $1 trillion worth of debt or something. I mean, it was like nothing. Our national debt was like a rounding error. And honestly, John, if we get stagflation, we should consider ourselves very fortunate because things are so much different now. And you could always buy a car, even back in the 1970s. It wasn't a car that you particularly wanted. It was going to fall apart after 20,000 miles. They are much better now. Now they last at least till the end of the warranty, American cars. And you can get extended warranties, but pretty much everybody's cars are made of plastic. Well, we do have the leading auto brand now, or soon to be the leading auto brand, and I'm talking about Tesla. So that's what's interesting. Maybe technology bailed us out in the 90s, the internet and all that. What is going to bail us out now, unless we have like I don't know, supersonic or aerospace planes, so you can live in New York City and commute to Tokyo for work? I don't know. I don't see the trend that will bail out the country and the world. Is there a trend out there? Like the internet really bailed out the world in the 90s and early 2000s, but that's just part of the fabric now. Is there something like the internet that can really bail the world out this time, John?
Well, there are all kinds of amazing new technologies coming along. But I think that's a separate thing from the fact that we're blowing up our lives financially. Because, you can have solar panels take over the energy economy, or, biotech give us all kinds of things that we didn't have last year. Those things can happen, and we can still go broke. And I kind of think that finance will swamp technology in the short run, just because the financial mistakes we're making are so much bigger than the early impact of technological change. And as you said, stagflation might be the best case scenario. And really, if we just have a replay of the 1970s, that would be a miracle, because we're in so much worse shape than we were back then. We cannot use the same tools to fix these problems that we used back then, which means that we probably don't have any tools left. There's nothing we can do to stop a waterfall decline of the major currencies once people lose faith in them. There's no way to raise interest rates to a level that would stop the decline in the dollar. In other words, make dollar-denominated bonds more attractive because the bonds yield more, without blowing up the leveraged speculating community, which is to say basically everybody right now, from homeowners to college students, to consumers to corporations. We're all leveraged speculators now. We're all borrowing huge amounts of money to place one kind of a bet or another on something paying off. And by and large, those things are not going to pay off, at least on a scale that will allow us to pay off our debts. So you raise the interest rate that we have to pay on the loans that we took out to make these bets, and we all go bankrupt. And that's kind of what we would be looking at if we used 1970s tools to fix 1970s style problems this year. So I don't know what the answer is. Some kind of really cathartic period of chaos in which we, have a come to Jesus moment and get our act together is what has to happen in the optimistic scenario. But it won't be pleasant. It won't be, a few years of rocky times like in the early 1980s when we have a hard recession and then we kind of get back to normal. Nothing like that is even remotely possible this time around.
Definitely not. And I sent you that chart, which I hadn't looked at up until yesterday, of commodity prices. And let's face it, commodities are main input into finished goods. And looking at them, it was staggering. The commodity price index, that's everything, I don't know if it's weighted or unweighted, is 61%. Now, one good thing is commodity beverage price index, which I hope includes hard liquor. That's only up 18%. So at least when it comes to buying liquid relief from all these price increases, you're not doing so badly. But some of the prices on here, like crude oil up 71%, Natgas up 118%, propane 122%. I mean, these are staggering numbers. Russian Natgas, which just spiked a couple of weeks ago to all-time highs, 595%. But if chocolate for your chocolate bar, that's only up 11%, but coffee, bad, up 38.5%. You look at all this stuff, John, it's like across the board. And this doesn't even include like lumber. The only commodities that aren't up are the precious metals, with the exception of palladium. But gold, silver, and platinum and such are just, they're in the doghouse. They haven't hardly gone up. Copper is way up. That's not on the list here. But for the most part, precious metals have been omitted. And I'm saying now that today we had a really good run up, $20 in gold prices and almost $1 on silver. But it seems to me that they're the next commodity to see the results of stagflation.
Okay, two things about that table that have all the commodity price increases there. If all of that stuff is up by big double-digit rates in the last year, how can we only have 4% inflation? You know, what that means, a bunch of things have to be going down commensurately, right, to bring us back to close to zero. And I don't know of anything going down. Is medical care going down, or college tuition? Car prices aren't going down; they're way up. So that chart implies that governments are lying about inflation right now.
Oh,
in order, surprise.
No, they never do that, John. They ever do that, really?
Yeah, you're right.
Imagine a government lying.
I shouldn't have insulted all those good people. But the other thing that it means, which you just spelled out, is that gold and silver are the outliers, and either all of the rest of the commodity complex comes back down, or gold and silver catch up. And I think it's highly likely that in the next few years, gold and silver will catch up to the current increases in the other commodities. In other words, gold will go up as much as iron ore, which is up, 150 or 200% in the last couple of years. I know that because we're putting in a chain link fence. And all the guys who've come out to make estimates are like, oh yeah, this is going to cost twice as much as it would have last year because chain link fences are made out of steel, and still, iron ore is way up. So that's a painful reality to me right now of the impact of inflation. And I think lots of other people are feeling their own versions of that same pain when they go out and try to buy something big and find out that they can't have it for what they used to think of as a reasonable price. So the psychological impact of rising inflation can't be far from the surface now. It's got to be bubbling up for a lot of people who are starting to get more and more concerned about the future because they know they're going to have to buy some things in the future, right? And now they're starting to think, oh my God, do I have the money to buy this thing 2 years from now? Should I buy it right now, even though it's way up? Which is the kind of inflationary mindset that sets in and really sends prices rocketing when you just, you don't care what it costs today because you think it's going to be way more than that no matter what tomorrow. So you buy whatever you have to buy immediately. In other words, you dump your currency for real things. And we can't be far from that based on what commodities are doing and what a lot of real world products are doing. So, and that bleeds over into your investment mindset. When everything you're trying to buy that you need for your life is going way up, you start to wonder about inflation in general, and you start to look around for things that you can invest in that will go up. And gold and silver, as the things that have not gone up yet, but normally do go up in this kind of an environment, look better than ever right now. Silver at $25 an ounce, I think we'll look back on that and go, oh my God, could I have actually bought silver at $25? Oh, why didn't I? Why didn't I mortgage the house? And I'm not saying mortgage your house and buy silver, but we're going to look back on it and think with hindsight that we should have mortgaged our house.
Hey, well, John, after listening to you, I bought this house. It's in great shape, but the appliances are looking a little bit worn. I mean, I was just saying, well, I could get another 5 years out of the microwave, out of the oven. The fridge is pretty good, but after listening to you, I just think I'm going to go out and buy all new appliances. Because what is the point of if I wait? If I wait 2 years, they'll probably be double what they are now. I might as well just get them while I can. And the question is, will we export inflation to the rest of the world? You and I had this discussion when the stimulus spigot was opened wide open, that there was going to be consumer price inflation, and we have to differentiate, because we're Austrians, and the definition of inflation is expansion of the money supply. But we expanded the money supply, doubled, tripled it, and we didn't. The amount of goods being produced was declined, was cut dramatically by the lockdowns, and now we're reaping our rewards for the stupidity, the idiocy of the policies of the past couple of years, actually for the past 60, 70 years, but it's all coming home to roost now. And like you said, I don't see any way out of it.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Osino Resources is a Ross Beatty-backed gold exploration company in mining-friendly Namibia. Osino's district-scale land package is situated near 2 producing gold mines, one of which Osino's management team previously developed and sold to B2 Gold. Osino's founders and management are experienced mining professionals who have already successfully developed and sold 2 companies in the past 7 years. Osino has a tight share structure, and with its current treasury, it can self-fund the advancement of its gold discovery into at least 2022. This is an exploration company with drills turning that you'll definitely want to pay attention to. Osino trades in New York under the ticker OSIIF and in Toronto under the ticker OSI. To learn more, go to osinoresources.com. That's osinoresources.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Well, we need to make sure we don't make this just an American thing, too. Because, we could be exporting inflation, except that the whole rest of the world is making these same mistakes. So it's not like there's anybody out there that's in a deflationary spiral that we can affect with our rising prices here. Commodities are a global market. So when they go up in dollar terms, they go up in euro and yen and pound sterling terms too. So everybody is experiencing this same inflation more or less because they're all making the same mistakes. So when this thing really gets going, it's not like there's going to be a lot of places to hide out there. The commodity countries, the ones that produce these commodities, like for instance, Canada, will tend to do better than the commodity consuming countries. But, it's going to be inflation for everybody if these trends continue. And that is to say, it's going to be a currency crisis for everybody. All the currencies of the world will start to decline at an accelerating rate. And what's funny about this is that it's completely possible that while that's going on, the media is going to be touting the dollar as the strong currency because it's up 12% against the euro in the last year. But what they won't mention is that the euro fell by 45% and the dollar only fell by 30%. So it's strong relative to the euro. But actually, all the big currencies are falling in value against real stuff, which is purchasing power. That's the way you measure a currency. And in terms of purchasing power, you already showed that the dollar is plunging against most major commodities, along with a whole bunch of other stuff. So, we're seeing raging inflation right now. In other words, a raging drop in the value of the dollar and the other big currencies. And it's hidden by the fact that we measure those currencies against each other so they can all fall and still be relatively stable in the mind of the mainstream media and the economics profession.
It's like a bunch of guys going to the bar, tying one over, and then getting it to go, because you can do that now. Since we had a certain health element, you're allowed to get your adult beverages to go from many places around the country, and then hopping into their supercars and deciding they're going to do a cross-country race. And man, the results of such behavior cannot be good, and it's going to be a disaster. The disaster is already shaping up. But if you watch the mainstream media, John, everything's great, man. Economic growth is great. Employment number as well, not as good as we thought, but everything's good. Hey, American military might still intact, even though we had a couple of minor setbacks in the Middle East and Afghanistan, but everything's good. So they're leading us. They're whistling past the cemetery, literally leading us, and so many of you out there, to oblivion, because They're lulling you into a false sense of security, so you're not taking the measures necessary that you otherwise might if you were seeing reality clearly, not through the warped, distorted lens of modern mass media.
Well, the state media, which is what most of the big media outlets are now, they're just like the government's, fifth branch of the government now, and they're going to be the last ones that recognize reality as it emerges out there, because it's in their interest to hide that reality. I mean, if negative things are happening in the world and you've got a fiat currency to protect, then you have to spin it in ways that will make people less worried than they would be if you were telling the truth, because your job is to prop up the currency and to prop up the legitimacy of the government in general. So they will never tell the truth until, well, they attempted to tell the negative side of the story when Trump was in power, because he was seen as the enemy of the deep state. And now they're back to what they consider to be normal, and they have to lie in the other direction now and tell us things are actually better than they really are. So we have to seek out unbiased sources of information and then make our own decisions, basically. And there's a lot of that out there. A lot of really good reporters have become so disgusted by their jobs in mainstream media that they're leaving for places like Substack, where Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald are out there telling the unfiltered truth. And that's available. You can sign up for either of their Substack feed, along with a lot of other strong reporters, strong, honest reporters, Substack feeds and YouTube channels and stuff like that, and get a big part of the truth. And that's what we should all be doing. We should be seeking out sources of information who don't have a built-in bias because they're not being paid by some big corporation to spin stories in ways that are favorable for the corporation, and we can do that. It's all out there. So at least until it becomes censored to oblivion. But right now it's available. You have to look for it a little bit, but you can find it. Yeah. And, shows like yours, Carrie, people can subscribe to your feeds and get a really varied take on what's going on in the world, most of which is from people who don't have any kind of a conflict of interest. They're just telling the truth as they see it. And that's very useful. I mean, it's terrifying compared to what the mainstream media are telling you, but sometimes painful truths are much better than fantasy. And this is one of those times.
Maybe I'll stop watching my own content and just switch to the mainstream media, because it just makes you feel so much better. Everything is good. What are you worrying about? The Alfred E. Newman outlook. What, me worry? Yeah, right. Hey, what, Jay Powell worry? Destroying the currency? What's the problem? No problem here. Nothing to see here, John. Just move along, because we know that that everything is going to work out in the end. Will Rogers always used to say, ignorance got us into this mess and ignorance will get us out.
Well, we can hope. Yeah. The ignorance definitely got us into the mess. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, and hey, I don't think ignorance is a strategy for the prosperous tomorrow. But as long as we keep electing the same morons, and we really have no choice, because it's moron A or moron B, and you could just ignore his party. One thing we need to talk about, though, John, is the recall effort underway in California to remove Gavin Newsom, or they call him Gavin Gruesome or Gavin Nuisance. I mean, when it comes to lockdowns, really, nobody's got anything on this guy. We can't talk about the science behind it or anything else, because we're not allowed. But point is, he has a very serious threat of being recalled. And the reason I know it is Soros sent him another $1 million for his efforts. And the polling has reached the gaslight phase. Like, they're saying that 58% of the people don't want to get rid of Newsom. And we know that they're really unhappy in California, as as Schwarzenegger would say. The last time they did something like this was back, I think, in 2003, when they recalled Gray Davis and they installed an actor in the in Sacramento. This is a major thing, because if Larry Elder becomes governor of California, then it's all over here, because this guy's a libertarian and he seems to like have a vision, and he seems to like really want to shake things up. So I don't see where they can allow him to. I don't know. I don't know how votes are counted in California. He's a long shot, but can you imagine a dark horse candidate? No aspersions on him. Can you imagine if he gets elected, John?
Yeah, that would be a pretty chaotic outcome, in part because it doesn't change the makeup of California's state legislature, which is, I think, supermajority Democrat, right? So you would basically have really loud gridlock, because Larry Elder wouldn't be silent about all of his ideas being blocked by the legislature. And the legislature wouldn't be silent about the crazy guy in the governor's mansion. Yeah. And California is so badly run right now that either they change a lot of their governing principles, or people vote with their feet and sell their California houses and move to Idaho or Montana or Texas or Florida, and the state starts emptying out. So that's their choice, and that's the nice thing about states. They're not monopolies. People can still vote to leave, and in that way pass judgment on government policies at the state level. And I think right now it's obvious that California's policies aren't working. And a growing number of people are just throwing up their hands and leaving. I had some friends from California come stay with us for a couple of days a while back, and they just told horror stories and, showed me some videos of driving by, for instance, a jogging trail, bike trail, where it's for like a mile, just tents. It's turned into a homeless encampment, this trail that they used to hike on, and now they're terrified to go there. And if you at the state level or at the city level, wherever it's supposed to be addressed, if you can't address something like that, there's going to be regime change. And whether it's chaotic or smooth is kind of irrelevant to the actual regime change. It's going to happen. You're going to throw you out, and they're going to put somebody else in charge, and then we'll just see what happens. And that's where California is right now. Even if the recall election fails and the current governor stays in power, there will still be kind of a changing of the guard in terms of who's in charge, just because it got so close. They almost threw the governor out. And that means everybody else has to start paying attention. But it's not clear what lessons they'll take from that, what kind of attention they're supposed to be paying and what they're supposed to do. It could be that they go further in the other direction, assuming that they just haven't gone far enough, and doubling down on their existing policies will fix things. That's completely possible in the mind of people at that level of politics. So we'll see. Yeah. I think chaos is the only thing you can predict with any kind of certainty.
I just can't fathom things getting worse there. Like, we don't have enough homeless. We need more policies to encourage the homeless. I mean, these people who are ill, mentally ill, drug addicted, alcoholic, whatever, they need to be institutionalized. But that's a story for another day. But keep your eye on California. The recall election is just 11 days away, September 14th. It's the only thing on the ballot. Even if the polls are true that 58% of the voting population or the likely voters want to keep Gavin Newsom in, they don't really know what a likely voter is, because how many people are really going to the polls, and his opponents could no doubt have a much higher enthusiasm rate than his supporters. And we've seen what happens when that happens. So just be prepared. There could very well be an upset. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying it is a possibility. Hey, in any event, make sure you go over to dollarcollapse.com, sign up for John's newsletter. It's definitely worth your while, because you will get the truth. the whole truth and all the truth you can stomach. That's a promise. And same with us, Financial Survival Network. Subscribe. John, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Have a great holiday.
Thanks, Gary. You too.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.